Do really help with job hunting skills is number 3. That's a critical piece. How do you help people with that?
Job hunting skills is like when you have to know about employment and you have to know how to get a job, all the interview stuff, like everything like that. What's going to be on an interview? How do you fill out an application? How do you kind of like charm your way in, I call it. You know, what kind of jobs would you like to do? I think a lot of the good questions is like asking a client, like, what kind of jobs would you like to do? And then start from there. Like once you find what kind of jobs they would like to do, then you find out what kind of skills they actually have to do those jobs. Then after that, then I think you say, okay, well, here's what your skills are. Here's the list of things that we came up with that actually fit those skills. Then you help them research what jobs, you know, are out there, like what businesses or what kind of, you know, resources are out there, what kind of just like different places can you get a job at, and then help them fill out an application and learn how to do an interview with them, and kind of like, but don't do it for them. Yeah.
I think that's a critical piece. Help them be supportive, but don't do it for them. You want to identify. That brings us beautifully to number 4, set up career tasks. So what are you going to do? What am I going to do? How do we help you move forward? It's a partnership. You can't help anyone. You know, none of us have kind of a drawer full of jobs. Here's your job, here's your job, here's your job. It doesn't work like that. What are you willing to do? What tasks are going to be? Are you willing to call this person? Are you willing to check on the internet? So it's a partnership of tasks.
Are you going to be adamant at your job? Are you going to just call out every day? Or are you going to actually show up to your job? And, you know, which ones are more laid back for the people that feel like they have to call out because it's such a high stress job? Or, you know, which ones are, you know, for the adamant workers that really want to be workaholics and
we got to find the match. So we're trying to define the right job match. And number 4 is creating a schedule to help them figure out, well, how do they move forward? And number 5, I think we covered a lot, is finding out what you're interested in, because if you get them a job and it's not what they're looking to do, then that really doesn't make sense. So now we'll quickly go through kind of the don'ts. And number 1 is don't advocate for them to take just any job, because if they take a job and they're not interested in it, it's not going to work. That really doesn't help out. Number 2 is don't leave peers unprepared, because if they're unprepared, it's really not going to work out well.
In my experience, I've been so unprepared for this. I mean, it's a new job. We're the first ones in Massachusetts on an adolescent unit, you know, to be peer mentors. So it's kind of like we're paving the way. So it's really hard to go into the place and be like, well, we don't really have a schedule. You know, we don't, oh, we have this group today, but then it changes every other week, and you don't really know what you're doing. I think it's better if you sit down with them, know what the person's job is, or at least figure it out with them, and write out a schedule, because, I mean, there's periods of time where I'm just sitting there like, ugh, is it time to go home yet? Because I don't have anything to do right now.
So structure is important, to help people have a structure and know what they're supposed to do, so in the downtime they have things that they can be working on and they can be prepared on. Number 3, Lori, is don't make things too far out. And I know we talked about that. That was one of yours. Don't create a timeline that's too far out, because then I think people get disinterested. They get kind of lost because the goal is too far.
You start to lose focus if you plan too far ahead. You don't really think about that big goal unless you make little steps along the way to reach in between.
Absolutely, and that ties right into 4. Don't make the goals too big, because if the goals are too big and too overwhelming, I want to be a doctor and you're not even in school yet, how do you have to break it down. Or I want to be a lawyer, but I don't even have a GED. Where do you start? You know, we can break it down and start, well, I'm going to practice being a, my goal would be to paralegal first, so I want to practice typing very quickly. So number 5 is don't overwhelm the person with a busy schedule or too many tasks, and I think that's really a culmination of the 4. So that would be critical, because as you're saying, if the person has too much to do and no place to start, it's not a good feeling.
To me, it's sort of like the crafts that I do. Like I crochet and I knit and I do all these other crafts like latch hook and all this stuff. If I overwhelm myself and start 5 different crafts at the same time, then I'm going to be disinterested after a while. I'm like, oh,
Right.
If I start
You
really
lose momentum.
right, if I have a big goal of knitting a blanket, let's say, that's a big goal because
Yes. It's a big blanket.
Right, right, and you don't know, like, if you don't know some of the stitches, it gets complicated. So first things first, learn all the stitches, and then, you know, make the blanket. So I think it's the same with the job. Learn all the steps on how to get a job, on how to keep a job, and everything like that, and then get a job.
Absolutely, to put everything together.
Right.
So as we wrap up, Lori, could you share with us kind of advice? Do you have a piece of advice for any peer who's watching it, who's looking or kind of starting the recovery process? Do you have kind of any final suggestions as we wrap up the show?
Just stay focused on your training and to remember everything you learned in the hospital because it's going to be useful once you get into the job.
Okay, okay. Raylena?
I'm going to say a lot of the clinical staff or any kind of staff try to make your job into what their job is because they don't understand what your job is. So as long as you still have that hospital background and you know that you're not exactly like the staff and you don't have to be, I think that's where you find you're comfortable in between, that you sort of are like a patient and you sort of are like the staff. So just keep that in mind and don't go one way or the other because that's really going to hurt your job and what you're there for.
Okay, so create your own niche, and I think we're saying that both for peers and both for peer mentors, is create your own niche and figure out who you are and how you can best help people. Because again, everyone can be successful with the right support, so find the best way to support both the staff and the peers. Well, fantastic. Thank you, Raylena, for being on the show. Thank you, Lori. We appreciate it. And we'd like to say thank you to all our viewers for once again tuning into Employment for All. We'd like you to look out for someone who might be in need of your support and help them really maximize their potential and reach their goals. So thank you very much. This is Kim Bisset saying, look for someone to be supportive of, and have a wonderful afternoon.